Now, it will always be different for every environment, so we need to keep trying, keep experimenting, keep learning. Detail-oriented managers in your organizations who want to control everything, well, then you are in real troubles because Agile gives a lot of autonomy to teams. You help yourself to build more respect for different opinions, different perspectives, different stances. And that's actually the prerequisite of.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Innovation Roots' interview series. And today I have a very interesting guest with me, Zuzana Sochova. And just to let you know a bit about herself, she's an independent agile coach and trainer. She's a certified team coach and a certified scrum trainer and has more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry. She's been a regular speaker at conferences. We see her all around LinkedIn. We see her articles and her speaking engagements across LinkedIn. We also know her as the author of the Great Scrum Master book and the Agile Leader Leveraging the Power of Influence. I'm really excited to have you with me, Susie.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and I hope you're doing well. And and then let's just get some valuable insights for our listeners.
Okay. So, as you said, right, I wrote a couple books, which actually started where I felt like I want to be the biggest enthusiast about Agile and Scrum all around.
Mhm.
I just want to show all the people that it can work, it is possible, right? Many times you reach people who are like struggling at the beginning and who are like, oh, it will never work in our environment. So I want to break that. It will never work, right? And bring some positivity in and help people to just see things through different eyes and got more of the belief. So that was the motivation for all those books. And that's actually also what drives me when I work with clients, helping scrum masters, helping product owners, and supporting them on their agile journey. I think the most important is to have that belief, to trust that it will work. And if we have that, then we'll make it happen. So it's not a question about if it's going to work. It will always work if we try. Now, it will always be different for every environment, so we need to keep trying, keep experimenting, keep learning. So that's what I do. I help people to find that belief, understanding, and guide them on their journey to figure out what does it mean for us to be agile and how it could be helpful for us.
That's great. That's great to learn the kind of motivation you have to help people. And I think that's how you have come up with your book, The Great Scrum Master, to bring some positivity in the community that, guys, you can do, you can be a great Scrum Master. So that's pretty interesting. Uh, Susie, we have seen that most of the organizations are giving high priority to becoming agile and very few of them actually are being agile. So, what do you think is the major challenge in being agile for any organization?
I think it differs, right? Segment to segment, maybe. There are organizations, their biggest challenge is their individual mindset. Over the years, they spent all of their effort to work with individuals and make them efficient. That's it. That's all what they care. How can we grow individuals? How can we make them more specialized? And how can we make them more productive? Now, part of the problem is that now with Agile, we actually are turning out from working with individuals because they're only efficient in simple and complicated tasks, but there is a limit in solving complex problems where it's too hard to come up with a solution. So we need to wake up the creativity of a crowd and start working as a team. And now, for many organizations, the biggest obstacle of becoming agile is this individual mindset. I have my work, I have my role, I do this, I do that. And now what? Right? So I am backend engineer, for example. I don't do anything else. I mean, why not? You're engineer in the first place at all, right? You're not a coding monkey. They say, oh, but it's too difficult. No, it's not. Forget it, right? So this individual mindset is something which is the highest blocker in some part of organizations. In the other organizations, it's actually the business side and their inability to see the value. So sometimes you talk to companies and you ask like, what value you deliver or how will you define it? And they say, that's our biggest problem. We just do work, but we don't really know why. Like, how is it used? We never seen a customer. I was recently in a company where they say we are not allowed to talk to customer. It's forbidden. It's like, wow, it's gonna be real fun. Do Scrum here, right? Because once we can't talk to customer, that's one of the cornerstones. We need to bring customer in and have a day-to-day relationship communication with them. Well, so team spirit, business value, mindset, right? And very often, in some organizations, very new to Agile and Scrum, they are kind of lacking both. Then it's funny because when you talk about backlog, right? It's okay, we have our little tasks, backend task, front-end task. No, you don't. That's not part of your backlog anyway, right? So that's part of your day-to-day work. Maybe that's how you distribute the work, but that's not what the backlog is about because backlog needs to be value-driven. So what is the need of your customers? What do you mean need? We don't really think about it. We care about back end, front end, right? So that's this very funny thing. Now, the third problem you see in organizations is the leadership. And sometimes it doesn't matter because as they see the impact which Agile creates on teams, they actually realize it's working much better than before. So they adapt because they realize they have to. But sometimes they try to block it because if you have this micromanaging, detail-oriented managers in your organizations who want to control everything, well, then you are in real troubles because Agile gives a lot of autonomy to teams. It's controlled. It's not a chaos, right? It's very strictly defined by product owner, Scrum Master, team rules, Scrum framework, right? But it's still an autonomy. You need to trust the team. So that lack of trust in some organization, the biggest issue is that you hear all around, oh, they will not work. We really need to control every single. Really? Like, wow, that must be really hard to work in this organization, right? So it's a mixture of things usually, and in every environment, you see one of those three, I think, missing or struggling the most. So you need to work around it and try to inspect and adapt and help that segment of your organization to shift.
Yeah, these are some really uh, great advices that organizations should focus on. So thank you for sharing that, Susie.
But
And
that's hard, right? Yes, we have, you focus on team, but then
yeah,
I've been lately in an organization and I say, I need their biggest issue because they've been pretty good.
mhm.
It's like you work as individuals, not as team. No, we are a team. We distribute the work and then work individually. I rephrased now, right? Well, no, you're not a team. You're a group of individuals. And it's so hard. But that would not be efficient. So it's very difficult to make it happen. Don't take me wrong.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there are going to be challenges to implement it appropriately, and you have to be ready for that. So yeah, that's not going to be an easy part. You have to be ready for this, I'm sure. And also, Susie, we have seen that at present, agile leaders are emerging like accidentally or haphazardly, practically by chance. Please suggest how an agile leader should emerge in an organization, not by an accident.
Not by accident, right? There is this concept described quite well by Bill Joyner, Agile Leadership book, I think it's called. And he described the adult leadership journey from expert to achiever to catalyst, right? So that's one of the very interesting concepts. So as an expert, that's how you're first time promoted, right? The simple version of it, of course, right? Because you know better. You can explain it to some people. You can guide them. You can advise them. You can mentor them. You can tell them what to do, pretty much, right? You're task oriented. You believe there is the right way, etc. Work with individuals. Then if you sort of continue on your leadership journey and grow a little bit as a leader, you realize there are situations where this is not the best approach. So it's better to give people some goals, objectives, and you can still advise them how to work with it, but it's not like telling them or giving them the way. You offer them, find your own way, but make sure you achieve that, right? And in that space, you work with multiple people already, with some groups, and you also realize that there are a lot of different ways how to deal with things, and you become less strictly like detailed oriented, more high level, right? And then finally, there is a catalyst later. If you grow, you realize there are situations where advising people might not be the best thing because maybe you're not the expert anymore on everything you can ever imagine. Second point, the goals might not really work because maybe they will just shift you towards the wrong direction. So all you can do is to create an environment where people can figure it out. It creates a higher flexibility, higher autonomy, of course, but it's really about coaching, about allowing people to take their responsibility and make a decision. And there is usually radical transparency, so we also know what kind of decisions are being made and why. And of course, there is a prerequisite for such an environment being an agile organization, right? For example, you need to have a very strong purpose. You need to really, all of you really need to understand what does it mean? Who are we? Why are we here? And so in agile organization, we need much more catalyst type of leaders. And if you're a catalyst leader, it doesn't mean you coach all the time. It means you can choose. There are situations where I would act as an expert, and I can do it, of course. There are situations where I can act as achiever. Yes, I can do it. I can set some goals when it's meaningful. But also there are situations where you would work as I would call it, agile leader slash catalyst slash, you might say, servant leader, true leader. There are like various different terms for that, right? I would say agile leaders are created from that experience, that they realize that there is a different way of leadership. They realize they can trust people around them. They also realize that 1 plus 1 doesn't necessarily mean 2, but could be actually more. They look for these win-win solutions. They're very flexible, very open-minded, things like that, right? But I think in order to be able to sustain that, you need to go through that journey, right? Expert, achiever, catalyst type of things, and be aware of how I show up in different situations. Because very often what we're lacking is the self-awareness. So when I started this big vision of mine, have a flat organization with like self-managing teams, etc., right? I thought on a paper in my mind it was simple, but then my behavior was not always aligned with that because it was new for me as well, right? It was a shift. So I was lucky because I got a feedback from my team. We have a very open culture and trust, so they came back to me and say, hey, yesterday you were always telling us we need to make our own decisions. And yesterday you made it for us. I was like, wow, what am I supposed to do? Right now, I completely screw up. So I thought, like, well, the only thing I can do is to be honest about it and say, okay, I screw up. Sorry. So I go back to that big team and tell them, like, yeah, I got that feedback and I'm sorry about that. And I'm on this journey together with you. So one of those things you really need is awareness about yourself and ability to accommodate and learn from feedback, because very often we believe we behave certain way, we trust people, we give them space, but then if you ask, how do you feel, do you really feel I trust you, do you really feel I give you a space? Wow, very often it's tough. So we don't want to hear it. So we rarely ask. So I think part of it, like how to create very good leaders in agile space, is to first of all be ready for that shift because not everybody would be at that. It's a journey, right? But also learn from feedback. So ask for feedback regularly and create higher self-awareness about how you show up and what influence you make and how your little remark actually completely shift environment somewhere without you even noticing, right? Things like that.
Absolutely. And as a leader, Susie, I think sometimes it's very difficult for to constrain yourself or restrain yourself from giving an advice or a solution to your team. I think that's very difficult. Instead of facilitating them to find a solution, we tend to
Mhm.
give the advice or the solution by ourselves to reduce the delay time or whatever it is, but we tend to
Mhm.
do that. So yeah, this
It
this
is,
often
it
happens.
is. But it just needs a bit of practice, right? So currently, I prefer to facilitate that when people tell people what to do. It's more fun, right? But it took me a lot of years to become confident as a facilitator and become, as my primary approach and not be afraid of what if it's not gonna work. Well, it will work, and if not, we'll talk about it. And I got that feedback, learn from it, and we'll see what happens next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then coming back to the technological changes happening across different domains and industries, what do you think is going to be the impact of digitization, big data, ecosystems, platforms, or artificial intelligence on the journey to achieve business agility for any organization?
I guess most of the environments where you are new to Agile, you also have a huge technical debt, a huge legacy system which needs to be changed. And also the behaviors which allows that system to be created that way. So I was lucky. I started my career as a software developer in the life critical systems, and it was a huge medical device company with very strict processes because it's life critical, right? So no bugs, no mistakes, etc. So I was mentored by people there to really write a good code and good architecture and everything. There was no questioning about shall we just fix it really quickly and forget about it, or shall we do it properly, right? And now, if you work with organizations who didn't have that pressure, life critical, system, then very often their systems are not well designed. It's kind of a spaghetti code, which is very hard to refactor, no automation. And then, like, what to do with it? Well, you have a debt. So first admit it, and then once you admit it, let's start paying it back, right? Step by step, sprint by sprint, little by little. So refactor certain modules, change the way how you approach the code as well, like having the same standard, having a decent code review, having the same way how we actually do things, short code, different branching, right? And I can continue like that, but I think it's a necessity to change also the technology, the way how we do things on the technical level, right? And then extreme programming practices are actually very useful, right? So what is the level of your continuous integration? Does it work, right? Do you even have anything like that? That's where you start, right? And then we actually start building it, refactoring it, and eventually, in a year, two, three, we have a really great architecture with a really sustainable product. And then the company is saying, wow, that's actually cool because now we can fully focus on the business. Oh, we still do the refinements, right? We need to never stop paying the debt, right? And making sure the debt is low. But it's not that struggling anymore. It's not restraining you from achieving your goals. So it's
All
tough.
right, and yeah, it's tough. Yeah. So, this is also how an organization can ensure that the agile management and leadership is always aligned with or relevant to the current times? Do you have any key mantra for that?
How can we ensure that the management is always aligned? Well, there is one radical transparency. Really make everything visible. And also, when you do in such an environment, there is this openness, trust, possibility, transparency, right? So if you do some conversation, it's always like voluntary based, inclusive, meaning everybody is invited. There is an agenda. If they have anything to bring the value in, they join. If not, they're not joining, right? But it's also voluntary based, and you can say, I'm not joining because I don't think I will bring any value in it. And but I think really it starts with the transparency. When you start talking about it in traditional environment, very often the managers say, well, it will be overwhelming. People would have too many emails or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be an email. It could be a system, a dashboard, a something, but you need to have an access to it. So if you want to check how many customers do we have, there should be a link to a system like, I know, check the customer CRM or whatever and have a look, right? I mean, why not? If you want to see who has vacation, you just click in an employee system somewhere and see who has vacation and when, etc. All visible, right? And if you have everything visible, who is working on what and how much they delivered past 5 sprints, and so on and so on, well, then you can see things, right? And based on understanding or having some data, you can make some decision. It might be weird. So sometimes people say, oh, but those data, well, I know, might not be perfect, but at least you see something. So you can say, how come that this team is only delivering this, or that team is doing that, or that team has, right? Too many bugs. It doesn't have to be the problem of a team. It might be a problem of that system, or maybe a problem of a product owner if you want to be, very creative. So the data doesn't necessarily tell you like the judgment, or if it's good or bad, or it just tells you, okay, something is happening. But you can actually have a look and see and think about it and make your own ideas about what do I want to do based on that. So maybe we can see that all of the teams who are not doing Scrum are having twice as much bugs as those teams who are having it. So it might be a good idea to switch. Maybe not, right? Because there is something else going on. So transparency, I think, is the key.
All right. And there's very interesting saying, or a lot of people say that agile makes more money. So the financial factor is the prime reason it is being implemented across organization. What's your view on this?
Yeah, money first, right? But really, like, we don't do Agile to be Agile. We do Agile because it works. How? It helps organizations to be successful. Now, what does that mean? Well, in some companies, you can measure it by money. In some companies, you can measure it by being a, I don't know, healthy company, which do some good, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be money, but yes, we do it because it gives us some value. It works better. And the better might look differently for different organizations. Non-profit organizations might not care that much about money. Some other, the only thing they care about. Some others just say, hey, we just want to be flexible and figure out what's the business going to be. And we want to be reactive, so no change in the market can influence us really because we react so quickly. So sustainability might be the goal as well. Right. So, but yes, at the end of the day, in the long run, it will translate to money. Otherwise, you're out of market in most of the cases. It just might not transfer to money immediately. So one example for all, I remember I was starting Scrum in one team, struggling, $300 every big release. They were releasing every 6 months. So every 6 months, they got about $300 reported by the customers. Not fun. And they were trying to do various different things about it, different consultants. No change, really. Until I show up and I tell them, hey, there is this Scrum and Agile, it's going to be great. It improves the quality. And they say, oh, that's good because we have the $300. I was like, okay, it might not go that quickly. We started anyway. And then 6 months after, I got a call from a manager, and she was like, "You remember, like you were telling us, Agile will help us with the quality." I was like, "Yeah, I know it comes. It's gonna be complete disaster, right?" But because we didn't really do that much, we just do a few things from all what the Scrum will offer, right? And it was funny because she said, "Well, we used to have $300, and now we only have 20 after that big release." So there is a significant improvement. We actually thought we're gonna be faster in delivery. We were not. We were a little bit slower, but it was hard to measure. So we actually decided to call it same quantity of work, right? But we only have 20 bugs to fix. So after one sprint, we are already working on new features. Comparing to previous times, we were still 3 months. We were working on the bugs primarily. So we are actually much faster, just in a very different way than we thought. So that's a typical for Agile. You want some outcome, it might come, but it usually comes in a slightly different way than you expected it. Not worse because of that, but it's interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, sounds great. Zuzi, one last question on this section would be, what's your advice to today's CEOs?
Well, focus on leadership. It's everything. If you grow your managers, leaders in your organization to become catalyst leaders, to become agile leaders, you're going to be much more successful in the future days.
All right, that's an interesting advice, Zuzi. And with that, we come to the end of our first round of the question and answer, and moving on to the very interesting round that's going to be a rapid fire where we'll be asking you some quick questions to know you a little more. So, are you ready for it?
Okay.
Okay, so do you have any best advice that you have ever received?
The best advice I ever received. Just do what you like. Don't care that much about what you're supposed to do.
All right. And when are you most productive in a day?
I'm mostly productive when I'm traveling somewhere and I'm in a different place in the world and mix of this sightseeing, walking around and doing some work on the way. It gives me more
Mhm.
creativity and time to think. So,
That's pretty interesting. And what scares you the most about agile transformation being done in today's world?
um, I think that process-oriented crowd coming from the PMI and those type of project manager, classical mindset people who try to steal this agile movement and map it back to their values. And yeah, I would call it dark agile, dark scrum, as some of my colleagues. It's just very frustrating to see.
All right. And can we expect a new book coming from you in coming days?
It's always possible. I didn't start any. I was just busy translating back my Agile Leader book to Czech language. I'm living in Prague, so part of my business is still focused on how can I bring some new ideas back to people who don't speak English. So I'm now writing books in English primarily, published usually in the US, and then I translated it back to Czech, and so we just finished that one. So I think I need a little bit of quiet time until I'm ready to commit myself into such a big work like writing a new book. So
All right. And How would you like to be remembered, Zuzu?
As somebody who care about the mindset, as somebody who care about if it works, as somebody who help people to understand it and make it successful.
All right, that's a pretty nice way of being remembered. I'm sure I'm gonna remember you with that always when I think of you. So, Zuzi, we had a lot of fun discussing some serious questions and some fun questions with you, and I'm really happy that we could spend this time. I would like to conclude this discussion. We have covered many aspects of agile leadership in rapidly changing world. um, what would you like to share as a tip for effective agile leadership in this ever evolving, ever changing world?
So I think it starts with having a dream, right? This passion about what do I want to change and why is it important for me? Because just because somebody told you, okay, there it is agile, change your organization, start a transformation, doesn't matter. So have a dream. How do you know it's strong enough? Well, if you win a lottery, would you be still coming and doing that, activity towards that dream or not? So you need this type of dream that you really care and you do whatever it takes. Then you also need to have this never-ending positivity and belief it's gonna work and keep trying. It's like playing a game, right? Where you don't really know exactly what can happen and you don't really know exactly like what's gonna work. So you need to try even crazy things and experiment. So have that experimental mindset because it's not straightforward, it's on the periphery. If you want to shift that organization into being more agile, it's always on the periphery. So can you, and that goes forward, right? Look, can you work with system? Can you work with cultures? Can you work with people relationships? Because the processes and tools and rules and guidance and everything, of course, important. It will gives you some boundaries. That's okay. But at the end of the day, it is about relationships between people. So can you understand them? Can you identify them? Can you work with that system, relationship system? So first step of that leadership model I created for my book was that you need to be aware of the system, the relationship system, energy level, the happiness, frustration, everything. Be aware, right? So the metaphor for that is like you imagine you stand on the observation tower, 10,000 feet distance, and that you see what is going on in your organization. And then you realize, oh, wow, there is no right, no wrong. I can't say this is wrong or this is right because about the same thing, various different things are happening. Those guys are super happy and proud about that. Those guys are completely frustrated and angry about the same thing. And those guys are actually having fun because they say, oh, look at that, or whatever else, right? So the more bigger the organization is or the environment, right? You can say team, you can say group of teams, you can say the organization as a whole, the more complex it is and the less predictable to say like is it right or wrong. Who knows what is right and what is wrong? And there's a second step, so you get awareness about what is happening, and then the second step would be embracing it, saying like, hey, that's happening, how fascinating. And if you can say with a big smile, how fascinating, without being like dragged, this is wrong, somebody needs to do something about it. No, they don't. I mean, yeah, eventually they might, but that's not me. I just notice it and I'm okay with it. Okay, it's happening now. So if you can say that, how fascinating. I mean, there is no right, no wrong exists in a complex system. The second rule that positivity included would be if there is a 2% of truth, what it would be. Can you see it? In all of those. And then you see the true complexity among people in that relationship system. And then the last point of that circle would be act upon. And then you do a little, like top it. With a question, with a little rule, with a little process, with a measurement you start to visualize. But my favorite is usually a coaching questions. Have you noticed? What are we going to do about it? Right? So reveal that back to that system and let them take the initiative again and again. Once you do that little thing and act upon, you go back to get awareness, embracing it, act upon, and so on. And through that circle, you learn how to work as a system, and you learn also about the complexity, you learn about unpredictability, you learn about diversity. You help yourself to build more respect for different opinions, different perspectives, different stances. And that's actually the prerequisite, or maybe that's it, what you need to have to become an agile leader.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't want you to stop talking, but we have this time box for this discussion as well. It was lovely having you, Zuri, with us, and thank you for taking out time to answer all these questions. And I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy them a lot.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you once again, and take care. Bye bye.